Hi, everybody. It is with great delight, and I'm telling you, great delight, that I am here with a new teacher and a new friend, Tanmeet Sethi, a physician, a board-certified integrative family medicine physician who is an accomplished writer as well. Her book is Joy is My Justice. And when this came across my desk, of course, I jumped right in. And I read this because I found the title so intriguing. I never saw the word joy married to justice ever. So I thought, what is she talking about? And then I found out. And she's so impressive and so magnificent that I thought if there was any way that I could get her to teach a course, I was going to do it, and I did. And so it is with just, I cannot tell you, a heart bursting with wonderful feeling that I introduce you to Tanmeet Sethi. Hi there.
Hi, Carolyn. Oh, that's I really am so honored. It's such a generous introduction. I'm honored to be here with you in your community.
Well, I'm telling you, I think you are accomplishing a wondrous gift through all that you have been through and are going through, which I hope you'll share a little bit about what inspired this book and then what is inspiring this class. But before you do, I want to emphasize again that in my years as a teacher, and I've taught in I don't know how many countries and for how many years, I'm losing count, nobody has ever recognized that they are in a crisis that is essentially the absence of joy, that they have been living a joyless life. They recognize depression, they recognize anxiety, but they don't recognize that so much of it is because they have no concept anymore of joy. So the gift you bring to people, honestly, by the suffering you've been through and go through, is redemptive. So may I turn it over? Please tell everybody what inspired this.
Oh, thank you so much. As you said in your video, if others have heard that in your email, I was 9 months pregnant with my third child, and really on top of the world when I received a death sentence for my second child, who was barely 3 at the time. It's akin to an ALS in young children. And so I learned that he would not only die from a fatal disease, but did have a degenerative process to that death. And Carolyn, it was the first time. I'm a fighter. I fight back. When things are not right in the world, I fight for justice. I fight for my patients. I fight for my communities. I fight for anyone who is the underdog. And it was the first time that I felt like I had nothing left to fight for, that there was just nothing I could do. And even the physician who told us the news said, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do." My advice to any physicians out there, that is not the way to give a diagnosis, but that's a whole nother course. But I, really didn't know what to do. And that set me on this journey of learning that if I fought for myself, if I fought for my own joy that was always mine to have and never anyone to take away or give to me, if I fought for that, I would learn the deepest justice I could ever know. And that's true safety, ease, and liberation in my body.
And I think that's, it's, I think a paradox for people that justice could result in liberation in the body. Therein lies Alone in Evening's lecture. But injustice and the belief that something unjust has happened to you is the source of more suffering than I think people realize.
Yes. Yes. And you probably remember, but in my book, I say this, and I say it all the time to my children, to my patients, that if you search for fairness, you will decimate your spirit. You will never find it. But if you search for justice, you'll soothe your soul. You will free everything, because justice is learning how to liberate yourself from the pain in your body. And fairness is too much of a comparison. There is no fairness in this life. I cannot explain why some people have to suffer so much, often too many times. And there is too much of a hierarchy in that comparison. Oh, my pain isn't as much as yours. Yours is more than mine, and the truth is, all of us have pain. Carolyn, my life is not the hardest life in this world by any stretch. It's also not the easiest. But if I start comparing it and making that hierarchy of suffering, then I start giving more power to the trauma or the oppression or the suffering that started it. And this is a lesson about reclaiming your power, not giving it away.
Exactly. Well, why don't you describe how you set up the 4 lectures that you're giving, and say a little bit, if you would, about the message in each one?
Yeah. So the first we'll have 4 evenings together, and the first one will really be on this question of why bother with joy. If the world, I literally have people asking me after every talk I give, is it okay to have joy? Why even bother? The world is literally burning in front of us, right? Metaphorically.
Joyful. Look at this world. Look at this, right?
And it's angst provoking for me on a daily basis. And yet, what we will talk about in that evening is why it matters, not why it's okay to have joy, why it's critical and why it matters. And that exploration in of itself can be so liberating to understand that, because there's so much guilt involved for people. We've branded joy as frivolous or not caring or self.
Right. That's the synonyms with it. Joy means, don't you take anything seriously?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The absence of serious.
Exactly. And so in that evening, we'll be able to kind of unlayer that and really look at it from a deeper perspective.
I think that's so important. I want to emphasize that. I think people associate, boy, did you hit a nail on the head there. I think I think joy is associated consciously or unconsciously with, if you are joyful, you're not responsible.
Yeah.
You're not practical. You're not productive.
Yeah.
It's just that you have to be somehow or other be draped in seriousness and pain and suffering. Well, that person must be working hard.
Yeah.
They're productive.
Yeah. Or somehow if you have joy, you're not grieving enough.
Yeah, you're not grieving enough. Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
don't love enough. If you're joyful and your son is dying, your mother is dying, or someone is hurting, then you don't care.
Right, exactly. You have we are so paralyzed in this polarity that either you're all suffering or you're all this, that you have to really suffer and suffer a long time that we have no idea of how to be whole, that we can have a multitude of emotions coexisting within us.
Yeah.
We can be happy and angry and joyful and sad, and they're all a mix.
Yes. And, you talk about this all the time, so your community will not be surprised by this language. But what I would offer to people is that life is more fluid than that. No emotion is so solid and block hard. Everything has fluidity and a dynamic nature and runs between things. It is not a one or other binary, like you're saying.
So that's just the first class. The second one.
Right. The second one will really look at the science of joy and pain, but in an accessible, practical way, not you won't feel like you're in a med school class. Believe me, I don't even want to go back to that. But what I want to offer is why it matters and how we can know in our body, through our nervous system, through our physiology, that joy and pain live there, and how they intermingle and how they work together, and how the practices we'll talk about can help bring that liberation and ease in your body. So I think it's really important to anchor in the understanding of your own body, of your own biochemistry, and everybody's will be a little individual for them, but the general premises still hold. And we'll talk more about that in that class.
I think that because I have long talked for decades that your biography becomes your biology. And in your is the bio stories that then become the cell memory, that become the cell tissue, and so on. And so the story goes. Class
Yeah.
number 3.
And then class number 3, oh wait, why am I forgetting the title of 3? Carolyn.
Joy lives in your body.
Thank you. I just had a moment there. Yeah, now this is really important. As you say, your biology, your biography, all of that is interlinked. Joy lives in your body. And what we talk about a lot is what we now well know is that pain and trauma live in our body, right? And Bessel van der Kolk and other experts have really helped to bring this to the mainstream zeitgeist and help us understand it. And that is a very important learning that we'll also talk about that night. But what I want people to understand is that trauma lives in your body, but that's also where it heals. And it's not until we get into our body, until we step, and I'll explain how to do that and what that means if it sounds confusing, but your community is pretty well versed in these things. But when we step lightly into our body, we find those threads to untangle and the way to heal and the way to make space for joy. It's so important to understand that because we spend so much time up here trying to think our way to joy. And I'm not saying our brain isn't important. It's actually quite important the way our mind wraps itself around joy. But if we think we're going to solve our absence of joy through our mind alone, I actually have never, Carolyn, I've never seen that to be the case, ever.
I believe you. I fully agree with you. Fully. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. In fact, when I first got the news about my son, I knew, you know, you'll probably won't be surprised to know I'm a pretty well-driven, ambitious woman. And you can see that in my biography. But I knew I could get through it. I knew I could cognitively figure out a way to get through and to survive, like that. I wasn't worried about that. What I was worried about was how to thrive, how to authentically feel joyful when I'm watching my son die, which goes against the order of all nature for a parent to watch. It's not what you expect. I expect to lose my parents. I expect to lose, many things, but I did not expect to watch this. And many parents have gone through this. I'm not saying I'm the only one, but I did not want to just mind myself through it.
What you're talking about is so unbelievably significant. It's such a life jewel. It's cosmic size. It reminds so many sacred stories are coming to mind. So many of them, even Krishna and Arjuna, when they are on the battlefield, right? The eve of this great battle. And Krishna and Arjuna is looking across the battlefield and he says, everybody I love is on the other side. And if I go through with this battle, my karma. If I don't, I'll destroy my dharma. But the fabric of the world is about to be torn apart. And he carries on and on. And Krishna says, the universe has taken care of all that. Do what you're supposed to do. These stories bring me such great comfort, just like what you're saying, which is we're part of such a huge ongoing journey of life. I know what you mean by if I allowed myself to keep another part of me going, joy, like when my cousin was dying, who's like my sister, when she was passing away, I thought I would die. And then I thought, no, I won't. No, I won't. And then I knew I wouldn't. And I knew I'd get through, and I knew I'd keep working, and I knew all that. And I thought, where shall I put my sorrow for you? And then I thought, well, first, I'm simply gonna still love you like nothing else, because I never had a sister like you ever, and I never will again. And I realized I did not have to live in mourning to prove to anyone how much I miss her.
Yeah.
And it goes against something in our first chakra, Tanmeet, because our first chakra is so locked into tribal survival, which
Yeah.
is locked into ritual. And part of ritual is extended mourning.
Yeah.
So what you're talking about is so extraordinary, truly.
Mm.
So I'm turning this into a class, and it's just supposed to be an intro video. And your last class, ask more
Yeah.
questions, seek less answers.
Yes. You know, if you ask me what the crux of it, I would say it's right here, which is, you know, when we look for only answers, when we look for solid binaries, there it is again. What is the answer? What is the reason? What is the way? We actually lock ourselves into constricted paths that do not allow for expansion.
Right.
And when we ask questions instead, I think it feels uncertain to humans to ask questions and think that that's enough. Well, I'll ask a question if I know I'm going to get the answer, right? And what I would say is that there are especially some questions that we'll talk about that I think are really crucial to turn that from constriction to expansion, and also ways to find what your questions might be. So I'm going to use examples, and then I'm also going to help the listeners, the students, really look at your life, what's going on for you, how to turn those searches into questions. And that way we can expand farther than the constricted lens of suffering. You know, all suffering constricts us into narrow paths.
Right.
We feel there's no way out. We feel there's no way out of this. And the truth is that imagination is a bridge to justice. It's a bridge to understanding that there are ways that we cannot yet see. And to have faith to walk into that is honestly, Carolyn, one of the greatest spiritual journeys you can be on.
Well, before I'm going to close it down with this by telling everybody the class starts Tuesday, October 10th at 6:30 Eastern time. But anyway, everything's on our website at myss.com. And so I am looking forward to this more than I can tell you, obviously. And I thank you for creating this beautiful class.
Oh, and I thank you for holding my work so tenderly. It means the world to me.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody. I hope you join us, because this will only bring sparkle to your soul. I promise you.
I'm looking forward to it.